Aloha, YouTube friends! You probably don't know, but Mrs. Tiki Envy is a 4th grade teacher in our home state of California. Part of her curriculum each year is to study the history of California and the California missions. In the summer of 2024, we went on a road trip and visited each of California's 21 missions, plus Fort Ross. We learned about the native peoples, the Spanish soldiers, and Father Junipero Serra and his priests. In between, we stayed at some of our favorite campsites, and we enjoyed a few tiki bars. We called it our Priests and Pagans Tour. We hope you enjoy this video remembrance of our journey. Mission La Purísima Concepción, the 11th mission, was founded December 8, 1787 by Father Lawson. It is named after the Immaculate Conception of the Most Blessed Virgin Mary. Mission La Purísima is unique because it is the only mission not organized on a quadrangle. From 1787 until 1812, the mission was on a quadrangle and 3 miles to the south. In 1812, however, that year's great earthquake and subsequent flood completely destroyed it. Father Mariano Payera, the mission's priest at the time, decided to move the mission's location and radically alter its design. Instead of a quadrangle, he decided to rebuild the mission in a linear fashion. Every room is along this adobe-floored corridor. This design was used to help the mission resist floods, and the new building was made without arches to enhance the building's strength. Father Payera even consulted with Russian engineers from Fort Ross, which we will learn about in another video. They advised him to design the new exterior walls using huge buttresses for support. La Purísima is now a California state park and a living history museum. It is one of only 2 missions no longer governed by the Catholic Church. The mission sits on 960 acres and is surrounded by 2,000 acres of parkland. Each year, the mission is a site for reenactments of mission life. Look at that guy over there. Saw those cows out in the pasture earlier. This is what happens to them. These include rawhide branding and leather work. The leather shop. Can't smell this on camera, but it smells fantastic in here. Through here is the wine. Nice. The kitchen at La Purísima. Imagine doing your cooking here. La Purísima also made its own bread, baked from its own milled flour. Greenery grist mills powered by burros were the primary method for grinding wheat, corn, and barley into meal. You can imagine a donkey in here, walking around on that thing. Here is the weaving shop. The native Chumash people also learned how to weave cloth. This illustration from the museum shows the transition of the Chumash going from largely unclothed to wearing Spanish cloth, like in the robes of the acolyte depicted here. As with all the missions, at La Purísima, adobe bricks, floor tiles, and roof tiles were made like these, as was pottery. Pottery shop. Very nice. Roofing tiles can be seen all around the mission, like at this gate with Mrs. Smith, or on the roof to the right of the bell tower. This is one of the mission's original bells. The bells were rung throughout the day for meals, as calls to prayer, and even to let everyone know when it was time to rest. The inscription on this bell translates to, Manuel Vargas made me, year 1818, La Purísima Mission of New California. The bell is now housed inside the California State Park's La Purísima mission. The mission does an excellent job of telling not only the story of La Purísima, but of all the California missions.
All the missions went through this period of Chumash, Spanish, Mexicans take over, and then the Americans.
The museum starts with the land, then the native Chumash, the Spanish, the Mexicans, secularization, and finally the ruin and restoration of the mission.
Beautiful diorama here of the Chumash. Working. Making adobe bricks. That'll work.
La Purísima, along with Mission Santa Ynez and Santa Barbara, was part of the 1824 Chumash Revolt. The mission was captured for 30 days and resulted in 16 dead Chumash and 1 dead Spanish soldier. The Spanish had anticipated resistance from the Chumash and had established a squad of 5 soldado de cuera, or leather jacket soldiers, to protect the mission. This was their cuartel, or barracks.
These are the barracks for the soldiers. Pretty amazing to think about. All these soldiers here kind of being that muscle for the priests. Their leather jackets.
The mission's many rooms and corridors are open to explore.
Priest's office and library.
Of course, at the height of the mission, no room would have been as important as the church.
The church?
After the mission was secularized in 1834, it was abandoned and passed in and out of private hands. In these photos from the museum, you can see it as it was when it was used as stables, a blacksmith shop, and even as a saloon. The adobe roof tiles were taken, and the mission's walls melted away. By 1933, the Union Oil Company was deeded several parcels of land, and only one of the original 9 buildings was still intact. Beginning in 1934, however, as part of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, the newly formed Civilian Conservation Corps began to rebuild the mission. That is a story in itself, and the museum does a great job telling it. Using old and new techniques, they restored the buildings, and the mission was rededicated in 1941.
So, this is unfinished. Conservation Corps left this room, so you can see what's behind the wall, so they used concrete to reinforce the adobe. Really fascinating how they did this in the 1930s.
La Purísima Mission and State Historic Park is a fascinating stop along the El Camino Real. After checking out La Purísima, we enjoyed a delightful lunch in their picnic area. We then pointed our camper north and headed towards San Luis Obispo and the Madonna Inn. I'd never been before, but if Liberace threw up in your living room, it'd probably look like this. Mrs. Tiki Envy tried on some fetching outfits, and yes, I went into the famous men's room. It is quite possibly the tackiest place I've ever been, but we did it. After touring their rooms and shops, we stopped by their silver bar for a drink. Actually, it was all pretty fun. time to move on to Mission San Luis Obispo. Mission San Luis Obispo de Tolosa is the fifth mission in the chain and is named after St. Louis, Bishop of Toulouse, who gave to the poor, denied his own needs, and died at age 23. He was the second son of King Charles II of Naples. The mission was founded September 1, 1772 by Father Serra after the fathers found La Cañada de los Osos, an 8-mile-long stream in what is now Santa Clara County, California, on a failed trip to Monterey. In 1772, the year of the mission's founding, there was a shortage of food at Mission Carmel, and so a hunting expedition was sent to Los Osos to kill grizzly bears for meat. The Native Americans there, who feared the bears, were grateful and traded seeds to show their thanks. Given this, Father Serra decided San Luis Obispo would be a good site for Spain's fifth mission.
San Luis Obispo.
A statue of a grizzly bear is in the mission's plaza as a reminder of the events. In 1772, Father Caballero was put in charge of building the mission, and here you can see an example of the mission's adobe walls. The first buildings were made from wood. In 1776, a Native American shot a flaming arrow onto one of the roofs and burned the buildings down. The structures were rebuilt, this time using tiles on the roofs for protection. Adobe roof tiles began here in San Luis Obispo. San Luis Obispo's walls are 50 to 60 feet high due to the Vatican law, which said they should be at least tall as the local trees, here the pine trees. It is one of the only missions still on its original site and is unique because of its L shape. Mission San Luis Obispo was known for wine, which was produced largely from the slave labor of the Chumash people, who were baptized here and not allowed to leave. In 1819, the quadrangle of the mission was completed, and 2 bells from Peru arrived. Along with all the other missions, San Luis Obispo was secularized in 1834 and closed its doors. In 1842, the last Franciscan monk died here, and in 1845, the mission was sold to Captain John Wilson for $510. In 1846, the mission was used by John C. Fremont for the war with Mexico, the Bear Flag Revolt, and eventually became the first courthouse and jail in San Luis Obispo County. In 1850, the mission was returned to the Catholic Church. In modern times, Mission Plaza was opened in downtown San Luis Obispo in 1970, and in 2020, a statue of Father Serra, similar to this one, was removed by the mission to keep it from being vandalized by people protesting against racism. Mission Plaza is still used today for demonstrations and protests, and the mission is once again used for religious services. They are a fascinating stop along the El Camino Real. After touring Mission San Luis Obispo, we capped the day off with dinner at our favorite restaurant in SLO, Giuseppe's. We then made camp at the foggy and cold Morro Bay State Park. It only got to about 60 degrees while we were there. We got some sleep and then headed to Mission San Miguel the next day. Mission San Miguel Archangel was founded by Father Lawson July 25, 1797, to close the gap between Missions San Antonio and San Luis Obispo. The patron saint of the mission is Saint Michael, who is victorious over Lucifer. Unfortunately, on the day we visited, the mission was closed, but we did walk around the exterior. The site for the mission was selected due to the large number of Salinan Native Americans in the area. In 1806, a fire destroyed the temporary church first built on the site. A new church made of tile and adobe with 6-foot-thick walls was completed in 1818.
San Miguel de Archangel, but it's closed today. Couldn't get them all. You can see this one from the outside, the graveyard.
This cemetery is the final resting place for 2,000 Native Americans and features a bronze statue of Christ on the cross. The mission's bell tower is original to the 1800s. The arcade, with its 12 arches, is also original to the mission. In 1834, the mission was secularized. William Reed and his family lived in the buildings until 1848, when they were murdered by a band of thieves. From 1845 until 1870, the complex was distributed to the Native Americans. The buildings were converted to commercial stores, hotels, offices, and saloons. In 1859, the mission was returned to the Catholic Church, but remained empty. In 1878, church services were reinstated. In 1928, the mission was returned to the Franciscan Padres. In 2003, an earthquake severely damaged the mission, but it reopened in 2009. Today, Mission San Miguel is considered one of the 11 most endangered places by the National Trust for Historic Preservation.